Hi, Martin. How are you doing? And hi, viewers out there. Welcome to Beyond the Pivot, a podcast that just runs you through the life of entrepreneurs and also ecosystems in Africa, entrepreneurship ecosystems in Africa and in Europe. Martin, good to see you. How's been your week? How's been your day?
Kabula, I feel like by the episode 10, we're gonna nail this beginning because we are improving one episode at a time. I'm so proud of us for
Absolutely.
that. I think my day so far was very busy, but I love when it's like no time in between, that you can just like jump from task to task to task, do the checklist, and everything is filled in by the end of the day. How was your day so far? Was it good?
Good day, busy day. So, what my day looks like, especially today, is just writing proposals. I think, well, I shouldn't even complain about that because that's a key part of my work and day to day. So, yeah, right from proposal writing, I had to just make sure we prepare for this particular episode. Yeah, and I've been thinking about news that I could share, and I thought maybe I could just give you a highlight from our conversation the last time in the previous episode, where we talked about one startup, which was BOSO in the housing space. I realized sometimes as we talk about these startups, we do not fully explain the context of the problems that they get to solve, right? And it would be important if we can even give some perspective on some of the startups that we spotlighted, specifically Boso, who are solving the housing challenge in Africa. So currently in Africa, there's a $60 million housing deficit. And maybe to give you some context in how people build houses in Zambia, basically people have to, if you're thinking of building your first home, you have to go and buy all the building materials by yourself by visiting vendor A, vendor B, buy your tiles from this other vendor. And once you have all these construction materials, you have to find someone who builds your house. And it will take you lots of time because you're building on savings, right? So you have to save money, buy your plot, and then you have to manage the entire building process. But Boso is trying to change that. So they are building a marketplace for people that are seeking to build homes. So basically, instead of you going to all of these vendors, you can buy everything in one particular app. And they connect you to also contractors that are able to support you with just building your entire home. They do a bunch of other things, and I'll be happy for the founders one day at least. Martin, I know we're still working towards that to come and tell us more about the work that they're doing. But I thought that would was an interesting problem that's worth sharing about the startup that we're talking about in the previous episode.
It's very cool. So is that a rule, that you have to get all the materials first and then build a house, or kind of prerequisite from a bank if you want to like mortgage or loan, that this is how or this is what they expect you to do first before you come ask for the money?
Can you ask that question again?
I assume that not a lot of people have that big of a savings to build a house because I'm sure it's a lot of money. So they are getting a mortgage or loan payments from banks. No, nothing like that.
No.
Oh, so I thought like
Typically,
maybe the bank is. I thought the bank is like I'll give you the money if you buy the construction material, let's say, or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, typically people that get to build are building off, if not savings, they are building off their retirement packages. So that's typically how predominantly a large part of the market is how they build. So some opt to build as they go. So where you find people, they build their slab, they have to build to window level and then complete the roof and then do the finishing up of all the accessories that need to be inside the houses. So that's typically the building process, which is very inefficient. And that's why I think Boso are trying to solve this relevant problem of the shortage in housing shortage that we currently have across Africa. And so there are many options that they get to provide as well in terms of financing and discounts on their platform to just make sure that the home builder has a seamless and pleasant building experience while they build their home, which I think is a very important
Yeah.
thing to do.
And is there any issue like with regulations? Do you have to get a permit to build, or do you have to have a plot of land first? Of course, you have to have a plot of land first, but you know what I mean. Like, what is the thing about the paperwork? Is it hard to get navigate?
Yeah, great question. So Currently, we have two types of systems in terms of acquiring land. In Zambia, we have the customary land and we have our, let me call it the national council land, right?
Mhm.
Local council controlled land. So by customary land, what I just mean is chiefs in different districts. So we still have chiefs, traditional leaders, have got the right to give and allocate land to whoever they seem fit, whoever they wish to give land. It's cheaper, but it's difficult to get that customary land on a title deed, right? So
Mhm.
it's basically on customary law, traditional law, and it's governed by the chiefs. But we also have the National Council, which gets to control land, which is usually on title. So they can give you a plot, you get to buy a plot, and they give it to you on title, which is a
Mhm.
title deed. So yeah, that's a basic thing that you need to have before you begin your construction. Yeah, depending on wherever you are, and that can vary. The cost, of course, customary land is cheaper, but the cost of that land varies depending on where you are in the country.
And once you have it, you can just start building. You don't have to ask for permission, permits, somebody approve anything. You just, I like the house with three windows and one staircase, and that's it.
Of course, the council, local council, does get to approve once you submit some designs, and if you're seeking to connect to your water utility companies for either sewer or just your water connection, all of those, at least you get permits. But I think now people are opting to have. We've seen a lot more people just drilling their own boreholes, so they get a permit to drill a borehole and also have their septic tanks right in their homes. So those are some of the permits that they get to.
And how long does the process take? 5 years, 2 years? Not the construction
I,
process, but to get the permits.
yeah.
Like the
No,
paperwork
the
done.
permits are fairly easy. Permits are fairly straightforward and easy to get.
Nice. Like again, we in here, like what I heard, I was born, but I was like 2 years old, at the time. So I cannot say I remember it. Definitely not. But what
Mm,
I heard and what I read is that our process right after the communism fell, like the first couple of years of capitalism we had, like the paperwork was pretty much 2 3 pages long, and
mm,
that was enough that the government gave you a permit to build what you wanted to build. Now the same paperwork is like 100 pages. It's like the proposal you got you are writing with uncertain results, because even if you put these all together, you have all the like stamps from firefighters, from all different departments, sustainability, all these things that would come to your mind. Maybe that would even not come to your mind, because I cannot even think of them right now, and I studied that thing. That
mm,
uh, this whole process usually takes like 2 3 years for a family house, and then you will figure out if you can build or not. And if you are building something in Prague, in the capital, that's like a little larger, maybe some family house or some like kind of unit for rent houses, it can take up to 10 years. So that's why
wow.
also this is pushing the prices up, because there is not
Mm,
enough units for the amount of people that are moving into Prague. But we cannot even
mm,
build them at time, even though there is like projects planned, there is land that it could be planned on. But these developers, they have to kind of calculate with their money and their returns. They will for 10 years not do anything, just paperwork. And
mm,
then
mm,
then afterwards they can start building, actually building, which doesn't take that much time. So that's why they think that I think every 10 years, or yeah, I think every 10 years, the price of the real estate in Prague will double. So the
mm,
sooner you buy it, the better for you. But essentially, I doubt that the salaries will be doubling every 10 years. So it will be more and more difficult to obtain housing for yourself. So we will end up like in the big cities in the West, like Paris or Berlin or London,
mm,
where majority of people are tenants. Very few of them are landowners themselves. Therefore, even the society gets richer. The gaps between the rich and poor are getting significantly larger, because if you don't anything, it's hard to inherit anything and build the wealth going forward. So I would say, the even though we are living in a seemingly rich country where I would say still it's everybody's achievable dream to own something of their own. It's getting more and more difficult. But kind of sneakily, they still
Mm.
you still feel that if you work hard enough, you can achieve it. But in London, if you work hard enough, maybe you can buy a elevator shaft or a small garage, kind of thing by the time you retire.
I hear you. And maybe my question to that, before we even get into today's
Sure.
topic, is how do you think that system affects short term and long term urban planning?
That's a very good question. I would say that with the depends who is planning it. If it's by the city or if it's by the development companies, because there are companies that buy up the land, do the projects, even start pre-selling the apartments before they even start building the stuff.
Mm.
And so somehow it was the case like 10, 15 years ago that mostly them they were applying like I have the land, I want to build whatever I want. Then slowly it went to the phase where the city put in regulations. It meant that every newly built unit has to have a parking spot. Every
Okay.
like block of houses that's of certain size, of certain people will be a certain amount of people will be living there. Now we have to have a kindergarten. I don't know, some kind of like pharmacy. Kind of like these like citizen services around it. So they don't have to then travel like a flock of sheep somewhere farther away and make other part of the city more dense because of that. So that coming into action with a good mindset, this is going to improve the quality of life and we will kind of disperse the people around the city. Also cause that with increasing regulation, increasing amount of paperwork, prolong the time and also made the returnability on investment smaller because if you have to build a kindergarten, you cannot build two commercial units that you would rent. So therefore, that pushed the price of the apartments up as well. So this urban planning is necessary. It's good. It just should go hand to hand with the bureaucrats cutting some regulations down so we can keep the price not rising so quickly. It will rise inevitably because the price of labor goes up, material goes up. But I think like the biggest cost is the cost of the money tied in these projects that cannot be used anywhere else until you sell it and build it. And 10 years is a long time to wait.
Correct. Correct.
I don't know
That
if I
makes sense.
answered properly because I'm not that good into urban planning, but
Yeah, no, I asked that question because I think due to the structure of how exactly you have to plan your building, it almost like forces not just the local councils, but the home builders, if that's a private sector that are trying to build, to think a bit more long term with the projects that they're trying to build, which could be different from us. I think there's that ability or opportunity for short term. So yeah, which might make long term planning also difficult as you build your properties.
anyhow, that's my 2 cents. Let's again, like last episode, let's go to something where we are more at home.
Yes, I think so too. So, would you mind sharing with us what the topic is to just kick
Sure.
us off even with the first question?
So after the first episode where we talked about how the ecosystem looks like and why it's what are like its pitfalls, we decided that we're gonna give one of those pitfalls a little bit more time, and that is investment into startups and distinguishing what is the difference between local and foreign investors. Who is leading the charge in the startup ecosystem in Zambia because that's where Kabbalah is mostly at home, and but maybe we can also get to some experience across Africa through your connections and kind of debunk the Chinese scare that a lot of people in
Hmm.
Europe have, that they will have to kind of deal with the Chinese citizens that are already in Africa, kind of making the name for themselves. So I would open it up with Kabbalah asking you, we know there is a scarcity of funding for early stage startups in the idea stage, but even if these guys are customer funded, where does the capital comes from if they are lucky, to fundraise?
Yeah. Thanks for kicking us off, Martin. So yeah, we talked about startups being customer funded, which is great. And I think the funding gap, or one thing that's clear, or basically what we know is the fact that capital is needed because if startups or SMEs are really going to see the growth that they expect to see, there is need for investments, be it in machinery, be it in equipment, be it in growing teams. Basically, they need to scale, and that requires capital. Not that they might not get there with a customer funded approach, they will get there, but it just takes a longer time for them to really achieve that goal. So, some typical sources for founders have always been the triple F, FFF rounds, which is your family, friends, other people say fools, but we're not going to say that. We are not going to say that. Let's call them enthusiasts, right? People that are really passionate about the work that startups do and would like to fuel and propel their growth, right? Those are typically the first stage for funding, and we have seen most startups raising from these types of rounds from as low as 1,000, 5,000 US dollars to as high for some as 50,000 US dollars within those rounds. That has been the initial type of capital that gets to propel them forward from ideation all the way through to having the first prototype in the market and actually launching a product in the market. The biggest gap gets to exist between this pre-seed and seed stage, okay? And that's from 50,000 now to a million US dollars. This is where the huge and biggest gap for startup financing exists. In as much as we have capital firms, firms that are able to provide capital, they see startups as being very risky. I think that everybody understands that being very risky. And they want you to be doing at least or looking to fundraise at least about 5 million US dollars for them to even look at you or consider you, or about 2 million US dollars for you to even get a meeting with them. Anything below that, it's very, very difficult. So, again, typical sources of funding have been family, friends, and enthusiast rounds for startups around here. Yeah, banks. I know someone would be asking, but hey, don't they have access to other forms of capital like banks? Right now, it's not favorable for them to get loans from banks because I think we should be at the cheapest income last time I checked should be at about 3% per month, which is just three. Actually, that could be even be modest. I think we should be about 3.5 to 4% per month, which is like quite high for the fintechs. Sorry, not fintechs. Microfins that are more lenient in terms of requirements for accessing the capital. The interest rates can even be higher, which could even reach as high as 55%, some even 60% per year. Other startups have resorted to also see loan sharks. These are almost like informal money lenders, and there we just don't even want to talk about what interest rates look like because it's just a very highly unregulated space. Some end up being victims of fraud, and basically you're just killing yourself and choking the business if you take that route. So those have been typical sources of funding for most startups.
So the family, friends, and enthusiasts is very hard place to navigate because you are kind of playing with fire in terms that they don't have too much money and they entrust you with the money to make something out
Yeah.
of it, and so that can break up the families and so on. So assume it's necessary round because that kind of shows that somebody is trusting you. You have the first money to go to prove your concept. But I'm surprised that there is such a gap between, like you said, 50,000 to $1 million. That's a like big range.
Yeah.
I would expect that the range to be smaller. So is there, you talked about Zambia Angel Network. So you guys are specializing in this gap, or maybe on the like, you are the enthusiasts in the beginning.
Yeah, great question. So the investment network basically just focuses on bridging that very gap, the very early stage capital. Because remember, angel investors get to typically focus on just after the friends, family, and enthusiast rounds. That's where you get to see a bit more angel investment also stepping in. right before we get to the some venture capital firms that have been playing also a key role to the growth of the startups that we will talk about later as well.
Hmm.
The Zambia Angel Network as well is just focusing anything below 100K. So far, that's what we've seen. Nothing yet above 100K. And that's where we're seeing them play a key role. And past that, we have seen some interest from venture capital firms that are now looking at different African markets. I'll be happy to talk about them. Some focus within Southern African region, some across the entire continent. Some have got their own impact metrics that they really focus on and very passionate about. And they will not bend for anyone unless they see that you're focused on solving some of the problems that they are looking towards. So that's what the Angel Investment Network currently looks at. I was just trying to check for you as well, just to give you an appreciation that this particular challenge is not just a Zambia or Africa specific problem, but if I was to narrow it down in Zambia, the current gap for financing for SMEs is at about 1.3 billion US dollars. That's a financing gap that we have. And so that's huge. And when you think about credit that goes to these particular enterprises, only 3% of the credit goes to very early stage. Sorry, not
Hmm.
3%, 0.3% of the credit that is available. 0.3% goes to these enterprises, which are below 3 years. And then only 8% goes to startups that are between 3 to 5 years. So it's a
Hmm.
huge gap, 1.3 billion, huge market, and opportunity to find a lot more sustainable options for startups to access funds and credit.
So is it, a very dumb question on my part, but is it hard to start such an engine network based on regulations? Do you need to compile paperwork and then present it to, let's say, Zambia National Bank, and she has to approve you? You have to be registered somewhere, or if somebody wants to solve this problem, like, do they have to be registered in Zambia or African country to do so, or can they do it from the outside? Or what is the better
A
approach?
great
Maybe they can
question.
do it. They can maybe do it from the outside, but maybe it's better to
Yeah,
be inside.
yeah, great question. I mean, if you are going to think around setting up in Zambia, I think firstly, from just a company registration perspective, I think that's fairly easy. Within maximum 2 days, if not a day, but I think it should be 2 days. You should be able to formalize and register a company. Like we have the easiest processes. Currently, actually, we are at, if not even higher, we have 66,000 registered SMEs. Yeah. So if not plus right now, since that was in 20, that should have been 2021, 2022. So we should have a lot more registered businesses. But from a regulation perspective, the one that I do know is quite key and relevant. If you're going to really have a fund manager, they need to have a license. Either as an investment advisor, you need a license from Security Exchange Commission, or if you're a fund manager, the Security Exchange Commission do provide that particular license. So that's from a licensing perspective that you need. But already, if you have someone technical on the team, or you can prove that equivalent licensing, I think that should also make the process fairly easy, because it's just a test that you have to run through to get that license in order to get started. So that's from a licensing perspective, from an investment advisor and a fund manager as well.
So there is some regulator in the market that makes sure that you're not stealing people's money and you're not playing them for a fool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And that is I mean, I'm sure that should be the case for Czech Republic. I'll be happy to hear
yeah,
from
yeah,
you.
yeah.
But
Oh, of course.
yeah,
Well, to be honest, I have never started a fund, so that's why I'm asking you. But
yeah,
the thing is that I know you have to be registered by the national bank, and it depends how much money you will be having in your fund. And based on that, you also have to pay the fees, like yearly fees or registration fees to the national bank.
absolutely.
So if it's like, I don't know, up to 500 million euros, it's like just you have to pay the lawyers and everybody to register with the national bank, and you can only take donations from like 3.5 million crowns, which is like 150,000 euros and up. You cannot take
Mm.
anything smaller. But that's like the smallest and cheapest fund you can have, which you can imagine is very hard to persuade people that have that money to invest into your thing.
Yeah.
And anything above that, you already are kind of almost scrutinized. I imagine it. Again, I have never done it. I imagine that you are kind of scrutinized as a public traded company almost, and you have to pay like monthly fee to the national bank, and so on. So it's very hard to start anything like that. And on top
Yeah.
of it, I would say that what you describe about the tests or the registered agents that have to have certain degree or certain knowledge, that's become a became a rule about 3 4 years ago, that anybody who claims it is a financial advisor has to go through some licensing, because before then you can just say, hey, I'm financial advisor, follow me.
Absolutely.
And that was pretty much it. But now, because a lot of people were scammed and like lost their money, they had to introduce these rules where you have to go through some teaching and become certified in that thing and have periodically showcase that you still know what you're talking about. Which
Absolutely.
a lot of banks had to pay for, because a lot of banks have these financial advisors that advise you how to use your money, right?
Just giving you a quick, and I
Sure.
think we can share with our viewers. Anyone interested, there's a link that we can share with them for licenses that you may need to acquire if you think of setting up a fund or what that looks like.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll ensure that the link is in the description for you.
Yeah, I will put it there. And I want to end on that we are one of the countries where, I don't know, some crazy number of people, like 2/3 of people have executions on them. That means like they are owning money to somebody, and then somebody comes to collect,
Mm,
and they put a stamp on your TV to pay it off. So, yeah, kind of, we are not the most financially savvy country when it comes to that, to
mm.
anything. Most of the people live paycheck to paycheck just because they don't know how to budget.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I mean, that's a common problem with us as well.
Yeah. So let's get back to the fun stuff, which is finding good startups and investing into them. How many deals do you feel are going on a year? Not just from Zambia, but overall in the part of Africa, like the Southern Africa. Do you see like 20 deals a month that are financed by random angel investor networks, or is it more like 20 a year? Like, what's the volume of the opportunity there?
We do have quite a number of deals happening on the continent with the five key sectors: fintech, health tech, logistics, e-commerce, which is retail, and education. Those are the ones that usually lead in terms of number of deals. For fintech being the highest, and then we have that should be clean tech as well. That comes in about second, if not third. So if I was going to give you an average of deals just across those particular sectors, in fintech, you see as high as even 700 plus deals happening alone. And what's also interesting is the ratio of number of deals and exits as well. So from those 700 plus deals that you're seeing, there's about 16 exits in the finance space, right? So
Mhm.
that's just in terms of ratio. We have in cleantech, I'm just looking at the data from Brighter Bridges, Brighter Intelligence. We've worked with Brighter Bridges in the past to get market intelligence on how founders raise funding as well. It's called the Founder's Guide to Raising Finance for those founders that are seeking to raise finance. And we'll be happy to share that with you as well in case there are any founders that are listening to this. Yeah, so coming to clean tech, close to about 250 deals. E-commerce has also close to just about 200 deals, and logistics as well, just coming shy of 200 deals happening in a year. So that's quite a lot of activity, and this is across the continent. Again, remember, we're close to about 50. We are 54 countries as a continent, and collectively, this is a market data and intelligence that's gathered. Yeah.
And that was the number per year, you would say, or altogether? That is in that the 700 plus.
Collectively,
Co-
let's see. Can I?
It's like
Yeah,
per a
because
certain
now,
amount of time, you know?
excuse me,
Is
that's per
it
year.
per,
Like all of
yeah,
this
per
in a
year?
year. Yeah, all of
Gotcha.
this is in a 1 year period. So quite busy. Of course, there are the big four markets that get to dominate when it comes to these number of deals, which is your Egypt, Cape Town, Nigeria, and South Africa. So you will see
Hmm.
that majority of these deals are happening in those countries, and then the others as well getting to come in to participate. Interestingly, I was just looking at the data and realized that Zambia in Southern Africa has been receiving the highest number of PE investment as well, private equity investments.
Hmm.
So, and it has been rated quite highly in terms of stability, be it from a political sense and a place to actually invest. So, that's pretty quite interesting, and I hope that would excite anyone who's thinking
Yep.
of coming to Zambia and making an investment. Yeah.
Today I was studying a global peace index, and I have to say Zambia was number 56. USA was 123. France is like 80. So just want to confirm that you're on the same level of Tanzania, or you are better than Thailand, where people go to vacation.
Yeah.
So it's very very stable country, within the perspective of the whole world, and very
Absolutely.
peaceful. Who do you think are the venture firms that are leading the charge? Like, who should we follow to know what's going on at least a little bit?
Yeah, great. So, because of the limited funding options that we currently have locally, you will see that founders are now reaching out to these firms that are having a more continental approach, thinking of Africa generally. And we've seen quite a number of these firms coming through to invest in startups. So, like we mentioned, Lupia. A
Hmm.
key thing about Lupia, it's the CEO is a female founder. So we've seen Enigma Ventures, which are based in South Africa and focus on Southern African region for their investments. They have invested in Lupia, and that's a scale now we're seeing and progress that we've seen in Lupia, and that's great. We've had the Bilbao Network. So
Hmm.
one thing I like about, so like I said, all of these have got different motivations and metrics for impact that they get to care about. Enigma is purely if you don't have a female co-founder and you're not women-led, they won't even look at you. The first
Hmm.
question that the team will ask you is, do you have a female founder with an equal stake or majority shareholding? And if your answer is no, they're not looking at you. So they want to see a lot more female-led enterprises across Africa, and they're very passionate about that. The Baobab Network, they do mention they invest 100K in ventures. And interestingly, they've invested in a startup that I forgot to talk about, shockingly, Mighty Finance. I'm happy to see that we actually have quite a lot of startups, and I'm forgetting some of them. So there's a startup called Mighty Finance. They've been through BongoHive, they've been through our Women in Tech program, the Standard Chartered Women in Tech program, and they were part of the Meet the Toshika's program. They did not make it to the top two. It's an investment readiness program, an accelerator program, but they were part of the top 10 startups that we had. So the Bilbao Network has invested in Vanganji, who's the CEO, female founder there as well. So the Bilbao Network are also a key player that right now that we've seen in this space that are investing in startups across Africa. So, and I know we do have the links already, and we'll be happy to share that in the description. Another network I would like to maybe mention is Launch Africa Ventures. They are in 22 African countries and have so far deployed close to about, if not over $36 million into startups. They've also invested in BOSO.
Hmm.
BOSO closed pre-seed round, and Launch Africa Ventures was one of the leading investors on that round. I am aware they are raising, is it 1.5 or 2 million US dollars right now? And I am certain, I think I can confirm the founder did mention that they did close 400, if not 500 US dollars in debt equity, and are only looking at the 1.5 to raise for an equity round. So these are the key players that we're seeing, but we also have other players like Renew Capital, Tiger Global as well that get to invest in startups in Africa. Locally, we have some firms like Kukula Capital, Mano Capital, and all of these are just key players that are coming and stepping in to ensure that startups have access to capital that they need, especially under this very gap that we talked about between 50K all the way to about a million US dollars. Yeah.
Some of those names like Tiger Capital, Tiger Global, I'm sorry, reminds me of
Yes.
the like I said in the beginning, the scare of the Chinese capital coming into Africa.
Mm.
Is this money involved into startups, or is it more they just buy a mine and deal with the mine, or like these giant infrastructure things,
Mm.
or do they try to
Yes.
also dabble in startups? And how big is their
Yeah.
presence, in Zambia right now?
Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Most of the influence from Chinese capital that we've seen has been, like you rightly put it, more on the mega projects, road infrastructure, construction. That's where you see Chinese influence coming through. Building and constructing hospitals, like those mega projects, is where we have seen a lot of Chinese influence. From a startup perspective, not yet. We haven't seen much effort that side. But basically, that's what the landscape looks like. It's more on the mega side, more mega project side. That's where we have been seeing a lot more Chinese influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, the EU with their new package will do the mega projects and startups, so they can plug in plug in this gap you're talking about, which is pretty significant.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
how many deals go through BongoHive, through your hands and hands of your teammates a
Yeah,
year, let's
great
say?
question.
Yeah,
A great question. So currently, we are not directly involved in the deals that startups get to have with their investors, and typically it's based on how we're structured. But we have been building BongoHive Ventures. I don't know if I've talked about BongoHive Ventures as
you
well.
have an ad? No.
Oh wow. Oh, okay. There's so much that I don't share, I guess. And I hope that as the episodes keep coming up, all of this information I have will be out there. But basically, we at Bongo Hive, because we work with startups at or entrepreneurs at ideation phase, some post prototype phase or validation phase, and growth phases, we have noted the funding gap, of course. And so we have had in the pipeline been working on Bongo Hive Ventures, which is basically a $15 million fund that we hope can bridge the financing gap for SMEs. And it will be targeting investments into startups between 100K all the way through to a million US dollars. So that's basically Bongo Hive Ventures. And there we are expecting to see a bit more deals going through our fund. But also, though again not directly involved, uh, based on our collaboration with the Zambia Business Angel Network, whichever startup has been through our program and raises funding from ZBAN, they get to access a catalytic fund from Catalytic Africa. I have to check where Catalytic Fund is right now. So basically, they get to either double or triple your investment. It's a matching grant based on the investment that you get to raise from your local business angel network. So that is aimed, I think I should have talked about this, but that is aimed to catalyze activity in the local angel networks and also collaboration with hubs as the center in which businesses are developed and hopefully empowered to grow and scale. So
So
I didn't answer your question directly, but that's where we are right now
maybe I will
in terms
ask you
of
different.
directly.
I
Yeah.
will ask a little differently. So, how many
Yeah.
residents do you guys have in Bungo Hive, and how many of them have some kind of investment in them?
Residents.
Yeah, like so. How many startups are there like in Bungo Hive every year? Is it like 20 startups, 100
Yeah.
startups?
Yeah. Great question. This year, for example, off the top of my head, without even looking at the data, we should be reaching close to about 300 startups through our programs. And these are at different stages, okay? Like I said, most of them with the ideation phase programs, that's where we see a huge participation. And as you keep getting towards the growth stages, you see that funnel getting smaller and smaller. With accelerator programs only taking as low as five, like the mentor pitch program, where we just take five startups. So Yeah, that would be my response directly to how many startups we get to reach. But over the past 13 years, we've reached close to about 2,500 enterprises at different stages of development. Yeah.
So out of the 300 this year, you would say like 100 of them got some sort of investment, like one third. Is it like fair assessment?
Nope.
No.
That's a generous assessment.
Yeah.
Out of 300, we could have about 20 that have had received some form of investment, either through a grant or directly through some form of angel network. Yeah, about
And
15 to 20. Yeah.
I understand that throughout the time they figure out that the concept wasn't it, they have to change it, some just give up and so on.
Yeah.
But again, it's just an assessment tip. Is there 20 get the money, 150, 200 were not good enough? The rest
Yeah.
just ran out of money because there was like the pipeline was too short or there was not enough customer base? Or do you think there is more good ideas that could have made it just because, they were short of money?
Yeah, I think when I look at mature markets, I think one thing that they've done is making an direct investment in also getting quality ideas. Okay, because we do believe that one quality idea, if it matures and develops into a large startup, their impact, be it from a return on investment, employment, is just enormous, right? And so there is definitely need, and that's why you see that ideation or idea stage programs get to attract a number of youths, young people, because we want to see, hey, ideate until we find that a clear idea, a great idea that could turn into an actual viable startup. So that's why we have a large pool at the bottom, and then we get to narrow it as we keep growing. Yeah. So there's need definitely to invest in great
Yeah.
ideas, and that's part of the work that we seek to do, and calling in a large pool of participants.
And building the startup nation, so you need a lot of people with
Absolutely.
good ideas.
Absolutely. So it's almost
Yeah,
like a value chain, right? From
yeah,
ideation, validation, growth. Yeah, you want to build and play, or at least have players at each part of the value chain. From a finance, we've talked about talent, all of these pieces, in order for you to now start channeling out real high quality and viable
yeah.
startups and
I would even
businesses.
say that even if you fail as a startup, you gain the mindset of a startup. So then you are a more valuable employee. Maybe it just wasn't for you that all the stress and the things that people don't talk about too much when it comes to this field. But you want to have your paycheck, you will come with great ideas, you will learn how to take
Yeah.
responsibility, and you will be a great employee in the end. So even if you just try and fail, you learned, and you learned more than anybody else who have never tried.
Absolutely. And just looking at a study, maybe you've looked at this. Do you know the average age for a successful founder,
I think like
startup
it's
founder?
40 years or some
Absolutely.
in the
40,
40s, right?
45. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Right. And actually, my colleague and I were having a conversation about this, how that's the average age, which is 45. And we keep pushing young people to be innovators. Well, not that it's a mismatch. I would like to believe introducing them to the concepts of being startups makes them at least be passionate wherever they will land, be it in a workspace. They have that at the back of their head that they can actually innovate and create value by building a startup. And so, in line with your comment on, hey, even if you build, you fail, I think what we idolize the most is these outliers, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates, right? All of these outliers. But really, the data shows that 45 is the average age for successful startup founders. It could be that these are second time founders that have failed. Could be some have been successful, at least they've been lucky early on, but it gives you the opportunity to learn as you either work, be in different spaces, for you to just come back and ideate, innovate, and build something that's of real value and impact. So startups shouldn't be discouraged, or founders shouldn't be discouraged, in case we have any
Exactly.
founders that are actually watching. Yeah.
True, true. Uh, when it comes to investment and whether foreign or local, what do you think should be the message? Should people more start when you are in Zambia, look for the foreigners or try to get the money from your local sources? Is there any difference? What would you
Yeah.
say that is the kind of the rule to success here to like get the good
I hear
investor, you know, in a
you.
sense.
I mean, here's the dynamic, which is interesting. The foreign investor wants to see that there's actually local investors that are interested in building their own local markets before they can invest in, right? And so it's kind of like a weird space where startups want to access funding. If it's not available locally, they want to go internationally. But again, internationally, they're looking towards local activity. So both are definitely important and have their place and do play a key role in the startup funding journey. And that's why for us, like I mentioned, we're definitely passionate about having our local angel network working and functioning, always getting membership. So the way it's designed, a number of angel investors get to subscribe annually. They have their subscription. They have their own meetings and summit and sessions that they get to have there, just to give them a deeper perspective of how to be a better investor locally, right? Because that gives, in turn, gives confidence to the foreign investors that we have to see that there's actual local activity in terms of investment into the startups that we have. But also, we can leverage learnings from investors from other mature markets as well. So that's where it becomes key on how exactly we can catalyze the growth of startups from a funding perspective. And so, yeah, both are needed. And startups right now, unfortunately, they have to look to both. And they should look to both, depending on their stage of development. But for the very early, again, it's a friends, family, friends, and enthusiasts. And then you keep exploring a wide range of venture capital firms that can look at you based on the traction that you have in your stage of development as well. Yeah.
I was trying to catch you if you're gonna say fools or enthusiasts there, but you minded the word right there.
Enthusiasts, yes. I will not call them
Enthusiast.
fools. Yes, sir.
So thank you, Capella. We will put all the links below this episode on all the venture funds, all the reports you mentioned, as well as on BongoHive. And if people would like to know more information or maybe about the Zambian Business Network or about your work, where they can find you.
Yep. Yes, again, happy that this is our fourth episode. Again, we are trying to find ways in which we can give you as much value as possible. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any thoughts, anything that you'd like to see us to include in these episodes. We were just talking about how episode will be our best episode yet. Maybe even episode 100, right? That will be the best episode. So looking forward to that. So it all depends on the feedback that we get. You can reach me again on LinkedIn. I'm very available. Just my name, Kabuela Malupande. If Martin is your friend or you know Martin, just ask him to give you my contact details. We can get talking. And yeah, I am available online and we can get talking there.
Thank you, Capella. I will be happy to introduce people. If anybody wants to find me, ask Capella and we'll make a nice circle. No, I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me under my name, Martin Vitek, and I'm looking forward to talk more about African and European entrepreneurship ecosystems. For now, mostly African ecosystems because I'm asking the dumb questions, and Kampala is nice enough to have a patience with me and respond to them.
100%.
Take care and have a great day, everybody.
Take care. Thanks for watching.